When we're avoiding discomfort, we're valuing safety. But the consequences of us playing it safe, staying the same, avoiding risk, avoiding discomfort, well, it looks like Groundhog Day. It looks like feeling bored, feeling unsatisfied, feeling low. When I avoid discomfort, I also shut off access to all the other amazing feelings that I could potentially experience.
Quick! Is anyone here a doctor? Yes, her name is Dr. Emily, and she's a psychologist. Please welcome to the Imperfects, our very own psychologist! Dr. Emily is back, obviously. And what a thrill. We get to come in here and learn so much from you.
We do.
It's so nice.
Yeah. I feel like I've started every episode with you so far this year with a strange question. I feel like I need to think of a strange question.
This would be great, Hugh. Yeah. What's this? I mean, intentionally thinking of a strange question? Yeah. That's going to be off the charts.
Not a strange question. The story with your glasses, like the history of your glasses.
You did say not a strange question. The history of your glasses.
Have you worn them from a very young age? Do you remember when you first came to wear them?
Wow.
I just thought we're going to make conversation with them before we start, you know?
Yeah. Chit chat.
So we all warm into this. The audience, help her warm up. So
Yeah, great.
did you get them when you were in primary school? Or?
I got them when I was at uni.
Oh.
Yes.
Stigmatism, or what are we talking about? Yeah,
Stigmatism, yeah. Couldn't see the lecture thing from the back row, so.
Oh, yeah. I thought, something's
not right.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Better go speak to an eye person.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I've had glasses ever since.
Were you excited when you found out you were getting them?
I was excited.
Yeah.
I'm less excited now. And I don't like contacts. They hurt my eyes. So.
Ever thought about laser?
No. I don't like the idea of like the eyes being peeled back and being awake. That really kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Agreed.
Yeah, so that's my glasses.
Since we're on the topic, I also heard that you can't get laser until your eyes have stopped changing. Or it's stupid too, because then you just have to get it again.
Oh, right.
When do they stop changing?
I don't know if there's I think it's different for everyone, maybe.
Okay.
I'm guessing
Do you mean
that.
Like your plateau?
No, like your eyesight, the issue with the eye.
Okay.
Because it gets worse. And then I guess at a certain point it stops getting worse. And that's when you're supposed to get the laser.
Do you like having glasses?
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except for when I have to find a new pair. That's hell.
Oh, is it hell?
It's hell.
Oh my God.
No, because because your glasses just become part of your face.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Like imagine if at some point you have to I have to get a new nose and you can't put the same one on. So you have to choose a different nose and every nose you put on is like, this is not me.
Yeah.
But it's the new you. You have to embrace the new you.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should get a new nose. Your nose is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
But, that's the thing with glasses. I don't know if you found that, Em.
Mm-hmm. Mind you, I think I've gone the other end of the spectrum where I was like, I want a new pair of glasses all the time.
Oh.
I was like, I feel like it's...
So it's heaven for you.
Yeah, like in some ways. And like I have a lot of different pairs of glasses.
Hell, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really,
close.
Really fascinating content.
I don't even know if we have time to talk about what you want to talk about, Em, because you insisted on talking about the history of your glasses.
Yep.
What a phrase.
Maybe we could sneak in some educational content just at the end of the episode here.
I'm more than satisfied. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So, Dr. M, for those who don't know, also people who have been fast forwarding, stop now. So you come in once a month and you bring a moment from a past episode to expand on from a clinical psychologist point of view. And what would you like to look back on?
I really wanted to look back on Tim Minchin's episode. And
as is with all these Dr. M episodes, we do link to the full episode below, so you can listen to Tim Minchin's episode if you haven't before.
Yes, which is an outstanding episode. And it also led me more broadly to think about some of the work he does and a particular piece of work that he did about the celebration of the Sydney Opera House.
Oh, yes. God, I love
and
that.
a particular song that he wrote, which is just amazing. But there's also a clip from his episode that I thought I'd start with to bring into what I want to talk today about, which is the notion of playing it safe.
I think the song is called
Play It Safe. Yeah. So I might just play his little clip first, and then I'll talk about his song as well.
Great.
I mean, it takes a huge leap of self-belief, which one doesn't just carry around with one. You have to kind of just take it to say, me at my most me is worth watching. I mean, that is a huge thing to, as a hypothesis, it's a crazy thing to test.
It's
because you don't believe it every morning when you wake up.
No, but it's. I mean, I would say it is brave, but I think also I guess you get to a point where you have the confidence that you can carry that show. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm doing what I said to you. I'd try not to do, which is just answer really long all the time. It is. I do that all the time. But self-belief is this. You know, like when people write articles about me or whatever, they talk about that they hypothesize I must have great self-belief. And I'm like, oh no, it's just absolutely evidence-based. Like I had no self-belief and someone said, that's good. And I went, oh, okay. You know, chalk that up in the column of positives as opposed to all the rejections and stuff. Okay, I've got one. You know, they like that. Okay.
And you believe that.
I believed it. Yeah. And you can tell when something you do hits, you know.
It's something I often think about with any performer, particularly stand-up comedians, but anything that I've ever done is like if you're professionally performing, if you're presenting work that you've thought of, you're essentially saying, come by, spend your money to see me because I obviously think I'm worth it. And I think like when we started doing this podcast, I felt a little bit protected by the fact that it wasn't just me. Like being just me would be terrifying. And I think like anyone who just is a solo performer is incredible for that reason.
It's like Guy Montgomery, the New Zealand stand-up, his latest thing, which on YouTube he starts by saying, I know why you're here. You're here because you like me. That's good for me.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
That's what it is. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it also speaks to me about the leap of faith and how worse off we would all be in the world in general if we didn't take a leap of faith. You know, if, for example, if Tim hadn't just had a go and just put himself out there, then we don't get the experience of his creativity and his art.
Yeah. Oh, so true.
And I guess this is really what I wanted to talk about today is the costs of playing it safe and how, like, it sounds paradoxical that playing it safe actually is more dangerous than not.
Yeah, taking the risk, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this is like so beautifully exemplified in the song that he wrote about the Opera House. So I might just play a little bit of that now if that's okay.
Yeah.
On your suit, hide your truth, wipe your tears. Don't cause trouble, find your bubble. Stick to black and white ideas. Play it safe, know your place, know your lines, know your limits. Find a doctrine, get it locked in, build a box and stay in it. Toe the line, on your suit, hide your truth, wipe your tears. Don't cause trouble, find your bubble. Stick to black and white ideas. Play it safe, keep it beige, keep it simple and same-ish. Leave the weird ideas to the Danish.
I remember when I listened/watched that for the first time, I was so inspired.
Yeah.
To play it safe.
Yeah, it's so well done.
Yeah. The video is amazing.
It is.
It's so amazing. It just speaks so much to the fact that so much goodness comes from us pushing the boundaries of taking a risk, of not staying in our bubble. And I felt really inspiring, and that's, I guess, kind of why I wanted to talk about it today. So I'm curious from your point of view, what is playing it safe? Like, how do you know you're playing it safe?
Oh, I mean,
I've done it for most of my life, I think. Yeah, certainly creatively, I've done it. I think it would look to some people like I've taken risks because back at school, I'd get up and sing a song like I'd play in front of teenagers as a teenager, which I think for me it was real challenging, and I imagine for a lot of people would be very challenging. But I feel like I've always done the safest ever version of that for my whole creative life. I've played it safe. Yeah, until this show was sort of dipping my toe in not playing it safe by talking on this show. And then writing the song for the live show is probably the most unsafe thing I've done But even then I felt like I just had this fantasy of just arriving as like a fully formed, like I would like to, this is getting very self-indulgent, but I'd love to write an album and write music, but I'm terrified of it being pretty good but not perfect. And I know that there's no perfect, but if it not being this fully formed, brilliant, the best I could possibly do, it makes me not want to try it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the anxiety, the fear of failure keeps you stuck.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a really wonderful example. Yeah.
I don't know why this is, but I feel like I have never played it safe. I don't think. I think it's just so weird. We live in the same house and yet grew up in the same house. I don't know. But I think to answer your question, I think it looks like when something scares you, you let that fear win. It's like if something's coming up and you're like, oh, that scares me, so I won't do it.
I think that's actually a really great way of explaining it. Yeah. It's like the avoidance of discomfort.
Yeah.
Or the avoidance of fear or pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I've spent so long playing it safe. I have to really work. I have to really push myself to not play it safe because I, like Josh, have that fear of mediocrity. I want it to, if I'm going to do something, I want it to be like really, really good. And so, but to be really, really good by my standards is really, really different and unique. And to be really, really different and unique, you have to take a risk, obviously, because you're giving something to someone that they didn't ask for, didn't know existed maybe. And so that's a huge risk. But like the fear is that you're going to fall flat on your face. And then by trying to do something different and failing, to me is like embarrassing.
And was it someone we had on the show? Did I hear it on something else? This and it's you'll have knowledge of this. It's classical music related. That if you look at the most brilliant, lauded classical musicians and composers of all time, the best ones are almost consistently, with the exception, I think they're saying, of Wagner, were the ones who have the most work. So they've written the most, they've done the most, and a lot of it's kind of mediocre and okay. Some of it's great, and some of it's the best music ever written. But it's almost, you can track the ones who have written the most are the best.
It feels like a Malcolm Gladwell book.
Could be, yeah. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think actually even Adam Grant talks about that too.
Could be an
like
Adam
the
Grant
more that
thing.
you're producing.
Yeah. It was Adam Grant.
Was it? Yeah.
But maybe not on our show. It might have been in research for him coming on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So like the more that you're producing, the more likely it is that you'll have some success in some ways.
And be able to perfect, in inverted commas, or at least do excellent work. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you just that's so about being able to like push through the failures though.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know that logically, but I'm not willing to
neither.
do it.
Yeah. Neither.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we like even kind of zoom out and have a look why, well, I think what sits at the heart of this is like totally in our evolutionary history, and that is that we have an instinctual and almost primary need for self-preservation. And we know this through the negativity bias that we have a very high tendency towards overestimating danger. So we're more sensitive to danger in our environment. And we also have a very strong tendency to underestimate our ability to cope. So you combine those two things, overestimation of risk or danger and underestimation of ability to cope. The obvious answer to that is stay in your lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. That feels like I wouldn't be able to cope if I stepped out of it and it would be too dangerous. Yeah.
Often happens when a musician tries to do a fashion line or an actor starts singing and everyone's like, whoa, no, that's not what you do. And so they're immediately like brushed with this, there's doubt immediately because it's like, no, you shouldn't be doing this or something.
I think in Australian culture as well, we've got a particularly critical approach to stuff. They're like what you were saying before, like, are you a comedian? Come on, say something funny.
Well, I mean,
Or
yeah.
like-
This is exactly tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
Which is like sticking your neck out,
Yeah.
doing something, taking a risk.
Yeah, which is interesting too, because I think that culturally there will be differences. So, for example, in America, this is a totally different experience. I know, Hugh, you've spoken about that in the past, that like being confident is idealized almost.
Yeah. No, I did. Is this like when I went and spoke over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I've had one for over in the US, which was, it was like 10 presentations in 8 days. And it was it was the big four like colleges. So like the biggest sporting colleges in the US. And I was doing my usual like self-deprecating like opener, because in Australia we like it when someone talks himself down. It's a likable sort of character, and I was starting with that, and this guy just yelled out, and he goes, "Come on, man, you can do it. Believe in yourself." And then the guy who'd got me over there he just panicked, and he started. He goes, "Yeah, I mean, maybe you could tell me about how you started the Resilience Project. It was nothing, and now it's this big thing." I was like, "No, that's not here to talk about. I'll be fine. Anyway." I did this whole talk, and they were like, afterwards they came up to me like patting me back, going, "It's okay. Like, it just did not work. Like and whenever I did like self-deprecating jokes about my looks or something, they just looked really uncomfortable. Like, oh God, come on, man, don't be so harsh.
Yeah,
It's not that bad."
yeah,
It was terrible.
It is culturally so different, isn't it?
And look, I don't know if there are actual cultural differences per se in terms of our capacities to take risks in general. I don't actually think that there would be necessarily. But, you know, if we zoom out and have a look at why we play it safe, like obviously it's to avoid discomfort. The areas where we play it safe are, like, to be honest, everywhere. Any moment where you feel discomfort and you try hard to avoid it, that's playing it safe. So, for example, like even something like communicating to your partner that you didn't like something. Don't say anything, playing it safe. It can be obviously the big things like going for the job that you want. It's putting something out there that's new and novel. Like the creativity world is obviously taking a risk.
Okay, so I think I have to retract my comment about I never play it safe. I do not like saying to Penny if I don't like something that she's done. I'm the safest man in Safetown.
Yeah, so I think if we reframe it in that way, that basically when we're avoiding discomfort, we're valuing safety. And there's something that is, you know, when we think about safety, it's predictable, it's familiar, and it's known. So, for example, like say you've been in a job that you really like, you're really unsatisfied in, but it's a steady paycheck, it's predictable, you know it inside out. So there isn't a discomfort from challenge that's there, but the consequences of us playing it safe, staying the same, avoiding risk, avoiding discomfort, usually looks like Groundhog Day. It looks like feeling bored, feeling unsatisfied, feeling low, a feeling like there's an untapped potential. And I don't mean to like use Adam Grant here, but you know, certainly kind of this sense that I'm not living the potential that's here. Yeah. So I might be safe, but we're not accessing the feelings that come with sitting through discomfort, for example. So it's almost like when I avoid discomfort, I also shut off access to all the other amazing feelings that I could potentially experience. How does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, okay, good.
It makes sense 100.
Yeah, excellent.
Out of 100. Yeah.
So if we were to have a look at, you know, why we might have tendencies towards that more so than maybe others, you know, as per usual, I will go back to like early childhood experiences. And, you know, we've got a full spectrum, obviously, in terms of like harsh parenting, gentle parenting, all that sort of stuff. But something that can be really common would be messages around literally being safe. So like, for example, how often would your parents be warning you with caution? Don't do that. Don't touch that. Just be careful. And I say this all the time with my kids too. It feels very instinctual, obviously, because we want our kids to be safe. But be careful. Like just, you know, be really careful when you're crossing the road. Make sure you're looking both ways. You know, we are peppering them with the comments all the time about the needs for safety.
Yeah, I my mum was very, very cautious, wants to protect me always, even to the point where I was in my 30s and she was like, "Oh, what are you doing tonight, darling?" And I was like, "We're going into the city for dinner." And she's like, "Oh, be careful." be careful and just, make sure you just keep a hold of your bag if you've got one. Really, really worried for me, like my safety and like I've been to the city many times.
Yeah.
It's not that scary, but I get it. Like I completely get it.
Yeah.
But I think because I've had that messaging my whole life, it's I'm probably less prone to risk taking.
Yeah, absolutely. And
result,
it makes so much sense that that's how it works. And if you were to look at, if anyone has done any kind of schema therapy, like there are obviously particular kind of early experiences, one of which would be an unmet need around basically vulnerability to harm. And so that would be that there are strong messages in there in your childhood that we are vulnerable to being harmed by the world. And so therefore you should be very wary. And so that can look like not trusting things or people. It can look like not taking the leaps of faith, basically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of not an uncommon experience if you've had lots of messaging around the world is unsafe and the people in the world are also unsafe.
The person I'm thinking of in this is Martin Heppel, who we've had on the show, and he talks about
rack.
Yeah, rack. And I can't remember the expression he used, but it was something like hunting the concrete or something of when your kid's going down the driveway and you want to stop them from hurting yourself and how passionate he was about how you just got to let them hit the concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this ties in also to, other experiences in childhood of autonomy and independence. So, really kind of thinking about your own experiences when you were little, how much opportunity were you given for independence and autonomy? So choosing your own interests. Like, did I do the sports that my parents wanted me to do, for example? Or did I pursue this because my parents suggested this was the best thing you should do? So what we notice in those experiences is that we actually feel really lost. Like, what am I actually interested in?
Oh, God, yeah.
And more to that, I can't trust my own decision-making. And that in adulthood often looks like a lot of issues with indecisiveness. Like, I can't make this decision because I can't trust that what I will want to do or maybe what I could do will be okay.
Well, yeah, and I should also say, as a follow-on from what I said about mum before, is that like I went into an industry which, compared to many other industries, is high risk from like a career point of view. It's like being an actor or performer in the arts in Australia is not a guaranteed salary. It's not security at all. So even though I did get all that, I was still very much supported to try that, even though the expectations weren't high necessarily, but the risk, the willingness for me to try was definitely there. I mean, it is. I often do think, because that's so interesting what you just said about what have truly been our choices versus what were we sort of encouraged into or encouraged or discouraged from. And I'm often I'm often like surprised that I'm doing what I'm doing now, because there was no one in my family in performing or entertainment, and it was a very, very risky thing by their standards, I think, to try and do.
What do you think you had to draw upon to do that, knowing that this context was one of safety?
I think because from a very young age, I said I wanted to be a comedian or an actor, and what especially when I was a teenager, when you start thinking about your career, what mum and dad would often say is like, well, yeah, you should definitely try that, but have a plan B. Have a backup plan, which is very common, and completely out of love, and they just don't want to see me fall on my face if I put all my eggs in the acting basket. I actually think it's like I'm not. I don't think this necessarily paints me in a great light, or even maybe not even an accurate light, to be honest. But I think there is a part of me that wanted to make it work because I wanted to prove them wrong. Like I not necessarily make them feel like they were wrong, but show them that I could do it. Show them that it's possible. And I think I'll probably continue to do that forever. I think even no matter how well I might do in it, like no matter how well the podcast goes or whatever, even though it's well past them needing to be impressed or anything or proven to, but I think it's just baked into me that I need to continue to show them that like this is a legitimate career.
Yeah, that I made a good decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I made a good
Yeah.
decision. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. But I think that that's also so common, like this sense that there is a strength in there that says I am going to do this and I'm going to take this risk because it's important to me.
Yeah.
Like ultimately that's like you kind of stuck with your guns there around like this is something that's really important to me and it's going against the grain.
Yeah. It's going against the grain in a environment which there's not much going against the grainness happening. You know, it's just, so yeah, it's probably as a risk for me to even try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, you know, even kind of zooming out, we can see how, I mean, it's really about courage. And when you look at like the etymology of the word courage, it's core, meaning heart, like the Latin word for heart. And so if we think about that, or the way I like to think about it also is that like that it's something in my heart. Like it's a deep desire in my heart. And when I'm not listening to that, I'm listening to the fear of something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, we can see that there are so many instances of really big, courageous moves, like, you know, someone that is the first in their family to go to university. Like this is going against the grain. Like that, like what a leap of faith there to do something like that, for example. Or the leap of faith to speak up in a family conflict where ordinarily no one speaks up. So there are these like moments here where we can see that I'm acting on the feelings in my heart, basically, and these moments are driving me towards or keeping me on track with the valued direction that is important to me.
Lots of things going on, lots and lots. I was just thinking that I don't know if I've ever taken a risk that wasn't approved by my parents. Yeah.
Wow.
I can't, I've been trying to think of one. I can't think of one that's like, and if they disapprove, they hit it, or I felt like I got permission to take that risk, even if they would have probably preferred I didn't go and live in Bangladesh for a year when I was 23.
Yeah.
They go, I seeked the permission and got it. I've never done anything against the.
Yeah. That's so interesting because I think I'm maybe the same. And even if it wasn't the permission or the approval, I feel like if I'm making a risky choice or going to do something and I need to feel like I've mounted a convincing case. Like, I've got enough evidence that it's like this is the right decision. You have to agree that this is the right decision based on everything I've shown you, Exhibit A through 10. You know, I've making the right decision, and then it's almost like they go, no, okay, yep, no, you're okay.
See your point?
I see your point, and it's like, great, now I can do it.
Yeah, rather than just doing it.
Yeah, rather than just doing it, trusting
just
myself.
Do it.
No,
I'm not sure.
And I'm wondering what would happen.
Oh, I don't know. I'm having never done it.
The world would end.
I believe so. Yeah,
that's what I heard.
That's how it ends.
Yeah.
I really don't know. The other thing that popped into my head, I remember consciously through as you get older, obviously as you're young, your only role models are your parents. And as you get older, you start to get different role models and people that you look up to. And I remember, like for example, when I started playing cricket at Melbourne Uni, there were older guys there who I was like, great, I've got a new set of people that I can copy, basically. I can take attributes from them and if I've got a problem, I can run it past them and they'll tell me what to do. I don't have to make the decision. And I remember this panic setting in my mid-20s of like, oh shit, I'm running out of people to look up to and it's going to be up to me to make these decisions.
And that sounds terrifying.
Oh, terrifying. Yeah. And I think they're linked, the two things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is strange because, you know, as I still feel like that even though I'm in, you know, late-ish 30s with 2 kids, I still feel like I would be nice if someone else made the decisions. Yeah.
Well, that allows you to feel safe. There's no risk then. Someone else makes the decisions. It also unintentionally diffuses us from responsibility and accountability. So it means that, you know, if something goes wrong, then I don't have to hold the blame of this decision going badly. I've had it's almost like the jury has given me approval to go forth with this decision.
Yeah.
But if I'm out there on my own, like, my God, like, that feels like, that is, in my mind, like, that's vulnerability. Like, I'm exposed here and I'm taking this risk, and it feels actually very, very uncomfortable.
I'm just, without wanting to kind of like, maybe this is zooming out too far, but if like Josh and I are thinking like this, there's obviously a lot more people thinking like this. But then I think like, well, people making properly big decisions on behalf of the world who are not willing to take a risk, maybe because, for whatever reason, but to play it safe in like a world leading or even running a big company, maybe because they don't want to lose their job or they want to get reelected. But then the cost of not taking the risk, I imagine the same applies.
Totally. Yes. And if you think about innovation or new policies or anything like along those lines, and even if we look at like, you know, Australian history in terms of politics, and I don't mean to go down that rabbit hole, but like of the momentous moments where change has happened, it has been a significant risk. Like if you think about like getting the vote, for example, or, you know, rights and equality, like they are the moments where we're taking, and the government and the people making those decisions are taking a significant risk. Yeah. And it's for like if we never took those risks, we'd be stuck. And I think that kind of represents exactly the sentiment that we experience on an individual basis, is that we get stuck when we're not taking the risk.
To make it from world politics to very granular, to refer to what I was talking about before, in a social setting, I was chatting to Amantha Imber from the How I Work podcast, and I was talking a bit about the album thing, and she was asking how it's going, and I said, I just keep on, any spare time I've got, I'm like, actually, I'll just fix the like bit in the, like we were talking in the form of procrastination, and I'm like, I'll fix that bit above the door at the house, or I'll paint that thing. And she like very quickly goes, that's going to work on your self-development. And I'm like, and it's really stuck with me. She said in a fun, like I wasn't taken aback or offended by it, but it was a very funny thing to say, but it's really stuck with me of like, oh yeah, nothing, like there's no progress in that.
Yeah,
for
I think
me.
you're really spot on.
Yeah.
And so if we do look at like the problems with not taking a risk, is that we never actually realize our potential. You know, we never really know that we are capable, much more capable than we realize. It also takes away opportunity for what's called the development of self-efficacy, which is the belief in my ability to do things, basically. So, you know, when you, like if you think about even, I don't know, learning how to swim, you could stop after you get, like the first couple of times you're in the pool, I say, I cannot do this. Like this is too overwhelming. This is too hard. It takes perseverance and determination and commitment to develop the skills, right? And so then we realize, like, actually my body is capable of this pretty incredible skill. But if we opt out when it starts to become uncomfortable, we never realize that I have these capabilities that are just sitting here, are kind of in some ways untapped. But of course, what sits there is the discomfort.
Yeah.
And so I feel as though there's like a very, and I mean, I say this in our episodes too, and that is that there's a very common phrase that we use, that we need to sit with discomfort. We need to be open to discomfort. We need to tolerate discomfort. And I'm just curious, I have my own thoughts on this, but I'm just curious from your point of view, like what does that actually mean? Or how do you, and how do you do that?
To me, it's just saying yes to hard things. Like hard things will pop up and you do it. So last year I got asked if I would host 8 weeks of talkback radio on Radio National. And I was like, yeah. Well, at first it was, that's going to be so hard. I've never done it before. But then also, and I got really I got nervous reading the email when it came in, really nervous. And straight away I was like, well, that means I have to do it. Like that's making me, the thought of it makes me so nervous. I need to do this. That's why I need to do it. I'm really nervous.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah, that was a really, like, and then I sort of pretended that I would be great at it until 2 minutes before we went to air. And the first there's like 5 screens in front of me. There's a producer on my ear. There's like scripts everywhere, and I had to hit like certain times to get. And I was like, oh, what am I doing? I don't know how to do this. Oh my God, this is a terrible choice by then. But then I got through it, and the first show wasn't great. But then my second one was much better. And then by the last, I loved it, and I was like, this is so much fun. and I learned self-efficacy through that.
Yeah.
I think.
Yes.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm that's a self-indulgent answer, but it's doing something that's really hard when you get really nervous about something. You go, I'm going to have to do it because I'm nervous. This means it's worthwhile doing.
Yeah. Wow, that's really, really great information there. The feelings are telling me I have to do it rather than the feelings are telling me not to do it.
But I have to say, I'm lucky. I don't know why my brain works like that. And I know that's not the case for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm just lucky.
I think sort of like as an extension of that, it's also doing the thing that's hard now, like when it's in the moment. So where it's like if it's a hard conversation or it's someone says something, to be able to, rather than what I would often do is like, oh God, that doesn't feel right, or I don't want to do that, and it's like then I'll take time and I'll think about it and think about it and think about it. Probably think about it so much and look at it from so many different angles to the point where it's like now it feels safe and it doesn't feel like a risk anymore because I've even probably the biggest one of my life is the decision whether or not to try and have children or not. Yeah. Is to be like, well, that seems like a huge risk. So I've thought about it for years now from every possible scenario, speaking to as many people. We literally got someone on the podcast to talk about it because to me it feels like such a huge risk to become a parent.
Yes.
Whereas for so many people, it probably feels like less of a risk. But for me, it feels like such a risk that I need to kind of get to a point. Whereas if I was ever to go down that path, I need it to feel safe.
To me, it's, and I've only rarely been able to sum this up. I think I've been able to sum it up when I've had to go through discomfort, when it's sort of forced upon me. Like if I've taken on a job that I just was like, I have no idea how I'm actually going to finish this, or it just feels like too much. The knowledge, but then I fail to act on this when it's stuff that I would pursue out of my own motivation. But the memory and the knowledge that I've gone, every time I felt like this, that there's no possible way I can get through this. I have gotten through it. And then the next time something of that scale comes up, I feel like it's easier to the point of, and then sometimes it's like, that's easy. So the thing that was once impossible is now easy. And yeah, that's the discomfort, or sitting in the discomfort and how I've pushed through it in some areas, but I've failed to push past it in many other areas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another great example, and I think it to me really highlights the struggle that we have in even defining what discomfort is or how we know it's here, or if we don't know what it is, how do we possibly know how to sit with it? And I think just from my point of view in like clinical practice, it feels really important for me to actually look at what is discomfort and what does it even mean to sit with it or be open to it. And I'm just going to give you this is like a very specific physical example. If I go to the dentist and I'm lying on the dentist chair and they're doing something in my mouth and I notice that my hands are gripped whilst they're doing that. Yeah. I also notice that my legs have kind of got a bit more tightened because it feels really unpleasant. Like there's nothing about this experience that I particularly like. It feels uncomfortable. So I can say here in this moment, here is discomfort. Okay. Now, being open to discomfort or sitting with discomfort is not, this is a bad analogy for this one, it's not gritting our teeth. Sitting with discomfort is not gritting our teeth and tolerating the experience. It's actually quite different to that. It's being open and having a willingness to feel what is already here. Okay. And another way I can explain this is like, do you want your friends to tolerate you or do you want your friends to accept you?
So with that one, tolerate versus, can you explain that a bit more?
If you knew that your friends tolerated you, how would that feel to you?
Shite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what we're looking at here. It's not about tolerating. It's not around like gritting your teeth and trying to get through this experience. It's about actually changing how we relate to the feelings that are here. And so the easy example with the dentist is like when I notice that I'm gripping my hands and my legs, I let go.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't change what is happening in my mouth. The discomfort is still there, but the struggle with the discomfort has finished. Does that make sense?
This is huge.
Okay.
Yeah, this is huge.
So this is not about getting rid of discomfort. This is about working with it in a different way, which is really hard.
So I went to the dentist the other day. I had this. I don't find it particularly unpleasant. In fact, weirdly, it brings back happy memories because I dad was a dentist. But
They still give you a lollipop at the end.
but it was painful.
Yeah.
What he was doing, and I noticed, and I was doing exactly what you're doing, that thing of tensing and letting go, and getting rid of the struggle, and then it becomes so much more. Doesn't become bearable anymore. It just becomes something you're doing.
Yes.
But can you? Because there's, as you started talking, I realised what you might have meant before was the physical feeling of discomfort when you're tackling something that is emotionally painful or distressing. And there's definitely physical sensations that come with it. So are you saying that the first step to accepting a creative act of writing something is to work from the physical point?
Yeah, I would do that a lot. Definitely. Yeah. And there are lots of different parts of how we do this. But for me, we go to the body because the body there's just no question. The body is experiencing the discomfort. And actually, if anyone's interested, the most wonderful way of explaining this was in Gina Chick's episode where she talks about not fighting the experience of it. So this kind of leaning into it, but it doesn't mean we have to like it. And I think that gets a bit of mythology around this that I should be really happy with discomfort. No, it's not great. Being really realistic here, it basically means that if I can notice where this is residing in my body, then I tune into the body. And it can even be things like, let's just say that you're feeling really anxious about speaking up. For me, I would do something like place my hand on my heart and just even pausing and taking a few slow breaths. And it's even for me the metaphor that I'm breathing into this sensation and I'm giving it room to be here. This might sound a bit woo-woo, so I hope that's sitting okay with everybody. But we stay present with the feeling that's here, and it's almost as though we give it room to be here, and then we can ask the really necessary questions like, okay, what is it that I need most right now?
This is so. I feel like I've heard this spoken about so much in different ways, and I feel like right now it's really hitting home.
Okay.
Which is that it's for anyone who's listened to the podcast more than once will know that I don't like discomfort, and I try and avoid it, and then I feel like if I can avoid the discomfort, then I'm okay. Then I'm safe. But what is just sort of finally resonating is to accept the discomfort means that that's okay. Discomfort is okay, and it's very normal, and it's just a part of being a person. And it sort of sounds quite simplistic when I say it out loud, but I think because probably my whole life, it's just if there's if there's a fly in the room, drop everything, get that fly out.
Yeah.
That is panic stations. There's a fly. Oh my God, there's a fly in the house. Someone get the fly spray. It's just it's this panic because there's this discomfort literally in the air. And I think that's sort of carried through to my whole life where it's discomfort is terrible. This is my belief. Discomfort is terrible. And so you have to either avoid it completely or crumble if you're in it when it's so I just had to say that out loud.
And I think that's really interesting because those two responses highlight exactly the problem that we will all struggle with, and that is what's called, well, certainly from an ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy point of view, the struggle with what's called experiential avoidance, which is the desire to avoid internal and external experiences of discomfort. And the other one is a sense of overwhelm and fusion with the unpleasant thoughts that come with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you mean that the thoughts of overwhelm, it takes over everything?
Yes, and it's almost like a tidal wave pulls you out.
So it makes it even worse.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that is exactly my experience. Yeah.
Mine too.
Really?
Yeah. That Avalanche. Like it's overpowering.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can't help but think about so the race that I run in the 400 metres, for anyone who has run it before will know the last 50 to 80 metres, Josh, you've done it, is putrid every single time. The lactate build-up in the body is so full on that your legs don't work properly and you feel like you're going to spew on yourself as you're running. It's horrific. And the inclination, and you always know it's going to come, like you know that feeling's going to come at some point. That's why I think I get so nervous beforehand knowing how much discomfort I'll be in. And the inclination at that point is to literally grit your teeth and grimace and like throw your arms around and flail around and just like fight so hard to get to the finish line. But everyone knows what you're meant to do is to relax your body as much as possible, relax your face as much as possible. Yeah. In fact, you're told to relax your face because that means everything else just starts to relax. Don't fight anything, just be as relaxed as possible. And the more relaxed you are, the faster you will move. And I can't help but feel there's just a huge analogy there.
100%.
And anyone who came to watch our national record attempt who saw me in the last 50 metres might know now why we didn't break the record by 0.9 of a second because I grimaced pretty hard. But the best 400 metre runners in the world will relax so much in the last 50 metres. The discomfort hits you like a freight train and you have to relax and go with it.
Yeah. But that's not instinctual, right?
No, it's every time. I've been running them for so long now. Every single time, I'm like, come on. I know. I have to relax.
Yes.
I forgot. Like it's just, it's so not natural to just relax into that.
And this is why it's not instinctual for us to lean into, to be open to be willing to feel uncomfortable feelings. It's actually very much the opposite. Our instinct is to get away from or to get rid of or be totally derailed by the discomfort that's here. Yeah. So I think the physical analogy feels so helpful. And I think even if we think about it in terms of like when you said about physical pain, what exacerbates the pain is the struggle against the pain.
Yeah.
What exacerbates emotional distress is the struggle against the emotional distress.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually, there's a really great little metaphor that ACT use, which is the notion of clean versus dirty discomfort. And it's this idea that, let's just say, I don't know, I have to go and do public speaking and I'm feeling anxious. So my primary clean feeling is fear, anxiety. And then when I notice that I'm feeling anxious, I then get the internal dialogue of not wanting, not liking, thinking I shouldn't be feeling anxious, thinking there's something wrong with me. So we get like a judgment and a dislike of the primary feeling. So that then becomes like a dirty discomfort. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dirty discomfort sounds like a DJ from the Hawthorne on a Friday night in 2007.
Yeah, look, they may not necessarily be very comfortable words to use exactly, but I think you get the idea here, and that is that we can never get rid of the primary pain. This is part of our existence of being a human, is that we will experience these primary emotions. What we can look at is how we relate to the first primary feeling.
So, I mean, bringing it back again just briefly to the thinking about like world leaders, would we prefer a world leader who has grown up with discomfort, or would we prefer a world leader who's grown up with no discomfort?
In the Shelton household.
Do you know what I mean?
I think definitely growing up with discomfort and messages around give it a try. And like this kind of comes back even just to very simple things like, so yes, anytime we take a risk, there is an absolute possibility that it's not going to work. Like we don't want to be like really oblivious to this. I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a chance when I take this risk that it's not going to work out for me. But what if it does?
Because when it does, it's the best.
Yes. And this is where it kind of trips us into a curiosity like, wow, what would it be like if this worked? What would it be like if I took this risk?
Yeah. The best films, TV shows come from that.
Yes. I mean, that's like, this is, you might be familiar with this, the notion of the hero's journey. And like you see this in pretty much every Disney movie, for example. And the one that comes to mind very quickly is Moana. So she's on their island, all the messages from all the villages.
I see what's happening here.
Take it away.
No, it's okay.
All the islanders are saying, don't leave the island. We have everything we need here. And she's like, no, there's something in my heart basically that wants to explore. And then she goes off and explores, and then her life becomes expansive and everyone becomes happy.
And she returns to the island at the end?
Exactly, yeah. And everyone is rejoicing because now their life is literally more expanded. But that to me is such a metaphor for playing it safe.
Yeah, it's great.
You know, we don't know what lies beyond. And I think that feels like a really important thing to pay attention to. When we're stuck, one of the things that I'd really kind of maybe encourage or invite you to think about is, or when you're playing it safe, is what will I think about this if I'm still here in a year? What will I think about this if I'm still in this same place in 3 years? What will I think about this if I'm still in this same place in 10 years?
So when you say, what will I think about this? What will I think about the decision? Yeah.
The decision of inaction.
Of inaction. Okay. Yeah.
As everyone knows, I drove Pat Cummins to and from the interview we had with him, and we were talking about decision making on the way back to the hotel. And a template he uses, which I think is exactly what you're alluding to here, Em, is he thinks, which decision will I regret most when I'm in my 70s or 80s or 90s?
Yeah.
And he'll look at a decision and go, well, I would regret that so much if I don't say yes to that or whatever it is. So, yeah, I think that's a similar thing.
Absolutely.
I remember hearing an interview with like a very, very successful businesswoman, you know, and I think she was in like her 60s, and she'd had a very successful career, and she was being interviewed and was asked, do you have any regrets? And she said, my biggest regret is that I didn't take more risks in my 30s. And I think I must have been in my 30s when I saw that, because I was like, oh God, yeah, that makes sense. Because every time you get older, you look back and go like, God, I can't believe I thought life was so serious in my 20s. You know, and you just continue to think that the time you're in now is do or die. Like it's like really important that you don't stuff it up. But of course, then you get past and you're like, God, I should have tried way more stuff when I was
in my 70s. I should have been doing heaps more.
Yeah, but truly, probably. Yeah.
That kind of brings me to that question that you might ask yourself, like, if not now, when? There is never a right time.
Yeah.
You know, particularly for those kind of pursuits that have been sitting with us for a long time, there is never a right moment. Or there is never the right moment to express a feeling of anger or disappointment with somebody else. Like there just is not.
Yeah.
So if not now, when?
Yeah. For me, inaction, I think of inaction as being inaction, but because time passes, and I'm sure I'll be the last person to say this, but to not do something is a choice. Like you're actually taking the action to not do it because nothing's static. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
There is just one more thing I thought I'd mention in terms of what might be helpful, like particularly when it comes to like decision making or moments in time where there is a discomfort or a choice. And it is you can Google this. It's a particular kind of diagram or framework called the choice point, which is used in ACT, and it was developed by Bailey.
Acceptance, commitment, therapy.
Acceptance
theory.
and commitment therapy.
Okay.
It was developed in 2013 by Bailey, Chiarochi and Harris, and I use it all the time in therapy, and I find it particularly helpful. So I might even kind of see if I can link it somehow in the show notes. But basically, if you imagine that you're traveling forward and you reach like a fork in the road, and this fork in the road is the place of decision making or discomfort, any kind of difficult experience. And on the right-hand side is an arrow pointing towards your valued direction. And on the left side of the fork is a arrow pointing away from your valued direction. So on one hand, we've got behaviour that is consistent with what we value and behaviour that is inconsistent with what we value. Now, what so often happens is that when we get to this point and discomfort arises, it feels very overwhelming, it feels really aversive, it feels really painful. So we make the left-hand choice, usually of avoidance or putting off or procrastination, and we choose a behaviour which is most often off track with what we value. So it might be something like you've got an event to go to, you're feeling really anxious, you decide not to go. Now, that event was your best friend's 40th. Is that choice there a value-driven behaviour or is it a value-inconsistent behaviour?
Yep, okay.
So that for me feels helpful, is like when I get to this point, okay, so what is going to keep me on track with my values here? What is going to keep me on track here is being open to the discomfort. And that comes back to those skills I mentioned before around slowing down, being open to the feelings that are here, acknowledging my inner critic, kind of working with that, and knowing that this is in service of the life I want to lead. But in terms of identifying your values, there are lots and lots of different ways in which you could do this. An easy way is to Google list of values. Like that's probably the easiest way, but there are lots of kind of experiential ways in which you can uncover or unfold what you value. One of the things I really like is thinking about the little you and thinking about like what you used to love as a kid. And so they kind of point us in a direction that tells us what's important to us.
Yeah.
And I think kind of paying attention and paying homage to that can give us an indication as to what we value.
Failing that, Em helped create the Resilience Project 6-month journal, and in there, that's the first activity, choose your values.
And it is, yes, that's
this
true.
Just might be an option for you as well.
Yeah, so that's a good starting point, I think.
Yeah, great.
But just kind of always kind of questioning, like, is this decision based on fear or is it based on my values? And that's where we're taking the risk.
And then when you hit the discomfort on the values road, it's okay.
The discomfort is in service of the values.
It's just some traffic.
Yes.
It'll pass.
Yep,
Stop gritting your teeth.
Yep. And so this is ultimately about like having a life that's worth living, really. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And enjoy the growth that comes with the discomfort.
Yeah, totally.
Dr. M, that was a good one. They're all good. That was a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's always funny when
such
we
a pleasure.
finish these episodes with them because it's so mind-blowingly great, and then we just look at her and go, thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, it's so nice.
Thanks
You
for
guys
blowing our
make it
brains.
easy to talk to, so